Welcome in. This is the early wedge, and this is truly, I think, the last line of defense because this golf tournament starts very shortly. Mike McClure is here to join me. Mike, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Rick. Fired up for this. I know it's not a major. It feels like a major. I love the weeks before a major. Yeah, a lot of great DFS contests. I know this is not just a DFS show, but a lot of big money out there available on the line in DFS this week, which is always nice to see.
T-minus 9.5 hours until this thing tees off. So very different than a normal Wednesday for us. And of course, that's if you're watching live. If you're watching on demand, even less time. But the time is yours. So any questions, concerns, comments, get them in the chat right now. We will go through them here shortly. But let's find a couple of jumping off points here, Mike. This is an event, like you said, leading into a major championship. Why do you like the weeks leading into major championships?
I mean, you generally get a really strong field, and you get, some players in the field potentially maybe caring a lot more about the next week, some not. I think it presents interesting opportunities, more specifically in DFS than betting markets. But I think it's mostly that and contests generally, whether it's an elevated event or something like this that's kind of treated like an elevated event. That's really what it's kind of been, the way the schedule's evolved. It's generally either an elevated event before or right after, and elevated events in our world, there's very little difference when it comes to prize pools for majors. It's just like we get more majors for DFS. That's something that I like.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point. So the field that we've got pretty unique, right? Scottish Open. It's a co-sanctioned event. So we have a lot of players that are on both the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour. Is there a way to quantify, or what would you throw a number at how we weight these two fields against one another? If a PGA Tour field is a 10, is a DP World Tour field a 5? Is it a 2? Is it a 9? Like how could we quantify the difference between the caliber of skill sets here?
You can use rickrungood.com to definitely sort through a lot of that. I highly recommend that for anyone watching. If I had to give a number, like on average, we could call it a 5 at this particular setup in the blended field. And we're talking about American players. I say American PGA Tour players kind of going across the pond again, playing a different style of golf. I would say it's 10 versus a 7 here this week. I think it's not as drastic of a change in terms of skill set and overall talent on this course here.
I tend to agree with you. I think that for the most part, people are like, oh, well, I've never heard of any of these guys. They must stink. It's like, no, they're like, a lot of them are probably better than guys that you see on the PGA Tour every single week. It's just opportunity and a little bit of luck, and they just haven't found their way onto a different circuit just yet. And then the other thing here, Mike, you mentioned it, and I want to dive into it a little bit. This link style golf, it is a different style of golf than we normally see. It might be a little bit of jarring for people when they tune in at 3 a.m. and they see guys playing a lot of different shots on the ground or have a lot of different options available to them. The forecast itself looks pretty clean for this week, but what do you expect to see when this tournament starts in terms of that link style golf?
I think it's not going to be like extreme birdie fest by any means, but from what I'm seeing and gathering, I do think it'll be somewhat scoreable here. And some of that is evident by, at least in my opinion, I think we're going to be betting unders on round scores on a couple of these guys. And I think we get a unique setup here in that oftentimes on the PGA Tour, there's a weather edge potentially for like Thursday morning tee times, early morning tee times. I think the wind is going to be at its worst for the week on Thursday early tee times. And I think the Thursday afternoon might actually have a better wave. That's exciting to someone like me. That should be exciting to you if you're someone that likes to bet round scores. The reason for it is if the course is playing harder than expected early and actually going to get easier throughout the day, that's kind of the reverse of the way these models that are pricing sports books are typically used to. So there will be a tipping point in there where I think that if you can forecast the weather accurately and identify a few of the guys you like, I think that what's happening on the course in the first few hours will shade some of these round scores by 15, 20 cents in a very favorable direction, which is opposite of what typically happens at a PGA Tour event.
Right. And that is interesting, right? Because it's usually the AM guys have, because of the course conditions, have the best at it, and the wind that comes in the afternoon. So that's a good call there. Okay. Before we get to everybody's questions and such, I will ask one more question, Mike, because I think, and for good reason, these 2 weeks kind of get lumped together. Mm-hmm. Is there somebody that you are going to have favorited on your PGA Tour app that you are just interested to see what happens? Doesn't mean you're going to have any exposure to him. Doesn't mean that it's going to make or break your week, but like, who are you just interested in finding out what they do this week?
Well, I will be very interested. I will be very exposed to them financially. But it's going to be Xander Schauffele, Ludwig, Victor Hovland. So I would say top tier, not the true 1-2 punch of Scotty and Rory, but that tier right behind them. Lump Colin Morikawa right in there.
Yeah, that's the one.
I know you were looking for that one for sure, and I was getting there too. Colin's out of all those I mentioned, Colin's the guy I'm not playing this week. I am playing a lot of Ludwig. I'm playing a pretty heavy amount of Xander, playing a little bit of Victor in an outright market. Colin is the guy I have no exposure to in any market of any kind.
Colin is the one that I'm just like, if he misses the cut, I'm thinking, yeah, okay, maybe that's certainly possible. If he wins, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's certainly possible, right? Just really, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we're going to get out of Colin. Well, here's what we'll do. We will start running through these questions. Josh will pop them up on the screen, but we're going to do a quick little soft reset, and we'll hit them after a quick word from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, let's get this conversation started, and feel free to continue to fire away on those questions, your comments, your concerns in the chat. Josh starts us off here. Dan, welcome, says, I'm in the top third of my one and done. Should I use Fleetwood, Justin Thomas, Sam Burns, Victor Hovland, Matt Fitzpatrick, or Ludwig Oberg? Mike, Dan has a plethora of riches available to him.
You are in the top third, and you've got options that could all go win this golf tournament. Yeah. Congratulations. You're in a great spot. For me, it's going to be Ludwig, but it's highly speculative. I am way above market. That's kind of my style, how I play. I'm going to throw it out there. So I like Ludwig here. I think that the safest bet for you to go rack up some cash is probably going to be Tommy Fleetwood. Mm-hmm. Depends on which end of the spectrum you want to play. You want to play super aggressive? I think Ludwig is your guy. If you want to play very conservative, I would play Fleetwood or potentially Fitzpatrick if you want to continue to buy into the run that he's on.
Yeah, the selection rates are strong for Robert McIntyre. He's in a tier of his own as far as one and dones. Fleetwood is kind of next. He's being used in about 15% of one and done entries. And I agree with you. If you're already in the top third, you're getting a guy around 15%. I think he's safer. A little bit of this also, I would like to know what Dan's plan is for next week. Is he going to have to burn another one of these guys next week? Does he have John Rahm available? Does he have Tyrrell Hatton available? Does he have something like that? But I tend to agree with you. Ludwig, high upside. Tommy Fleetwood seems to be a little bit of a better floor, and he's not going to be overly popular.
Yeah. I think knowing what you wanted to do next week in that particular situation would be, you should definitely be considering that.
All right, Joshy, what do we got here, bud? What's next here? Okay. Chris says, oh, look at this. My biggest question, Morikawa has planted a seed in my brain. Will we ever get to a point where a Bryson type decides to employ freelance caddies depending on location? So the Morikawa seed that has been planted in Chris's brain, Mike, is he is going to use Billy Foster for the next 2 weeks. Billy Foster is a incredibly experienced caddy who is basically retired at this point. I think he's kind of doesn't want to do the full circuit, and he is going to be on the bag, not just this week, but next week. Now, Chris is taking this about 10 steps farther and saying, is there a path where these guys would just pick up a local caddy everywhere they go?
I was hoping we'd bring this question up. This is a fascinating question. I don't think we're remotely close to this happening.
I agree.
Is there some sort of scenario where there's a lot of AI being involved in the game of golf to the point where we have, essentially wearable technology helping players? Like, you want to talk about 2050, 2100, maybe, but no, I don't think this is remotely close to happening.
Yeah, there's a couple of problems with this. Not every player wants their caddy to be that guy. Some of them just want their buddy who's a good hang and they can spend a lot of time with. And like, that's the sense that they're going with. It's not necessarily who can figure out the golf course the best, because they can all do it pretty well over the course of the first 3 practice rounds or something like that. So I think that we are incredibly far. What I would actually like to see, Mike, is the guys get there and there's a caddy draft. Yes. And they draft their caddies on like Monday morning. Like, give me that. I want to see how that plays out.
So I'm going to look it up. I have a background in motorsports and racing and things like that. There is, or used to be, a racing series that essentially did that. Cars were all but prepared identically, and you didn't know which car and everything you were going to be in until the moment before the race with a draw. Wow. Where it was truly down to a skill set like that. I think that would be a fascinating thing in golf for some event, right? Just some sort of draft, whether it be a team event, whether it be it would be pure entertainment.
It would be sick. I love that. All right. Josh, what's up? What's next, bud?
Wait, hold on. One more on that. What if they had to use the other, like the bag that the caddy was on? You had to play with that player's equipment as well.
Dude. Okay. That's another thing is I kind of, part of me does wish there was like a standard equipment. Mm-hmm. And, like we'll never get there, but like if we got to see all these guys and they're all just playing the same exact clubs, I think that would be unbelievable.
Oh, it'd be so good.
At least the same balls. Like, let's start there, and then we'll on the rest of the clubs. Okay, Josh. Joseph Bosa says, DFS, what DP World Tour players should we be looking at? It feels to me like there are some steals in the 7K range. And Mike, Joseph is correct. Like, just a lot of those guys who are residents of the DP World Tour, play primarily over there, are basically almost all $7,500 or cheaper. So if you are looking for them, or if you're looking for cheap options, you might end up finding them. So are there a couple that you think are worth the click down there?
Yes. And forgive me if I don't pronounce the name correctly. Marco Penge.
Okay. That's as good as I assume it is. Yeah.
I assume that's right. At a flat 7K, I have a pretty strong rating there. Matt Wallace. I think Matt Wallace could gain some ownership. I think he could be popular at 73, but he definitely fits that bill. Rasmus Nørgaard Peterson definitely fits that bill at 7,600. Other than that, it's kind of actually more PGA Tour guys in the 7s. I guess you always have to mention Jordan Smith, but I think that it's a healthy mix. The 7K range is extremely strong because of those names I mentioned, and then guys like Gotterup, Gracerman, and Knapp, and all those that are just playing really good golf right now that are underpriced.
Yeah, I mean, Aldrich Potgieter is $7,200. He was a winner 2 starts ago. I mean, Denny McCarthy, Jake Knapp, guys that have been playing well and or in contention are there. So does that, because of the strength of the 7K range, has that made your builds look any one particular way?
Yes, it really has. I'm getting a ton of 3 7K guys. Like, but at the height of the 7K would be a little bit of Gracerman at 78, but just like a ton of Gotterup at 71, Penge at 7, and just, yeah, I'm getting a ton of 3K guys, and then just 3 upper 8 to low 10K guys that I love. That's my standard build right here.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good options in that range as well. Okay. Josh, this is from Jack. Oh, wow. Look at this. We are deep. This is clearly this is a field. So Jack says, thoughts on Tristan Lawrence plus 140 in a 3-ball over Von Dellingshausen and the other Fitzpatrick. That's Alex Fitzpatrick. Mike, is there a stance to take on these guys?
Whew. I don't hate it at plus 140. I am admittedly not the biggest 3-ball market player. I do generally prefer a single head-to-head matchup, or as it's become more popular and available, I do generally come down to round scores, but this looks like it's a full tournament 3-ball, not a round 1 3-ball. So that's a little different story. But I do definitely recommend identifying the player you like or don't like and fading them or backing them on an individual round basis if you were considering a round 3-ball. But if this is a full tournament, I would lean on the Lawrence side at plus 140.
I would as well. He's been playing better against the competition, clearly better competition. However, so here's the recent results for Nikolai von Dellingshausen. He won the Austrian Open. That was 4 starts ago. Then he went 7th at the KLM, 5th at the Italian Open. Then he missed the cut last week at the BMW International. So I think he might be the problem. Alex Fitzpatrick's played okay, nothing special. The other thing to consider here, though, Lawrence's success, as we mentioned, he's played well in majors. He's played well in like signature events, actually like PGA Tour events. So we've got to weigh that as well. While I'm thinking about this, I want to look at we are, like I said, hours away from this thing starting. Yeah. Everything is getting finalized here. And I want to start with the guys that you are probably more overweight on than everybody else. These are guys that you're taking a stand for. Who are some of those names that we think are worth the stand?
So for me, it's definitely Ludwig at the top, but the big 3 that I'm high on and overweight on at the top would be Ludwig, Tommy Fleetwood, and Xander when we're talking about spending and also overweight. And then for me, Chris Gotterup, Max Grayserman, Jake Knapp, guys that have been playing well that I think are just simply too cheap. And the combination of getting them alongside of a Xander Schauffele, Tommy Fleetwood, or Ludwig, or 2 of those 3, that's very much where I'm meaningfully above the field. It would be, it's those basically 5-6 players. It's Ludwig, Gotterup, Pengay, Grayserman, Knapp, Fleetwood, and Xander. Those are my guys I'm heavy on.
Do you find yourself really committing to like talent, like obviously Ludwig's year has been a little bizarre. Xander's year has been a little bit bizarre, but they are by all accounts top X players in the world, 5, 6, right, whatever you want to call it. Do you find yourself leaning on that side of things more frequently?
I do. And it obviously it does come down to pricing and ownership. And there's a combination that makes every player playable or unplayable for me. But in times like this, it is going to be just leaning on overall skill set. As I like to call it, a metric that's not actually tracked, just strokes gained talent. Like I'm looking at, how many of the best golfers can I get? And I like to do it in situations, whether it be like, a month or so ago, we had a course that was relatively unknown. And we just made the argument that yes, we think this is what it's going to play like. But as we profile it, I'm going to back the guy that I know can play well all around. Right. And when we're changing style of golf and having the additional element of the travel going across the pond, when you have all of those different variables like that, I think it's a great time to just simply lean into the top talent that you possibly can, knowing that everyone's facing variance.
It's a really well said. And I think that the biggest miss for a lot of us, and I'm certainly guilty of this, is not just admitting that we might not know that much about this.
Yeah.
Right. Or that this is going to play out in some way, or golf is really weird and strange. And at the end of the day, the best players in the world are the best players in the world for a reason?
Absolutely. I think it's just, I do a lot of sports. I know you still follow a lot of sports. I think it's extremely true in the sport of golf. Like,
yeah,
just extremely true.
It's a sport played outside with a lot of variables. I want to get your underweight players, but before we do that, Josh, hit me with that Scotty ownership, because I know you've got all the numbers and all the models available to you, Mike. And Faustino is looking for Scotty's ownership or projected ownership. He's referring to a single entry tournament. I don't know if you have it on that level, but what do you expect for the industry to move on Scotty?
I think it's going to be between 34 to 40% single entry. I think it could be a touch higher.
Yeah. Usually a little more polarized in single entries.
Generally, you typically get more hand builds in a single entry contest, which is generally truly picking the guy you want most, more so than computer built lineups. So I would say 40, and in some contests, depending on stakes, as high as 50 on Scotty. And I do fully expect him to be the highest owned golfer.
That was my next question. Yeah. So I think that he is also likely to be the highest owned player by a decent margin. Who would be the others that probably round out the podium there? The second and third guys that you see are catching a lot of ownership at this point.
I think it'll be Rory and McIntyre. I think that my data is showing Rory still above him. I think that sentiment's a little mixed on Rory still. I think Rory might come in third right behind McIntyre, but I think without a doubt the top four will be Scotty, Rory, McIntyre, and Fleetwood.
Yeah.
And then right after that, I think it starts to get a little interesting there. I think that it'll be Matt Wallace, maybe a little bit of Matt Fitzpatrick. Hard to say though.
Yeah, then it starts to get a little blurrier, and a couple percentage points this way, a couple percentage points that way. But I tend to agree with the way the top five is shaping up indeed. Okay, continue to fire those questions in the chat. We'll go through them. But as promised, Mike, these are the golfers that you are underweight on, the guys that you will not be having as much exposure to as the rest of the field. What did you end up here on those guys?
This might sound like the guys we just talked about, but no. it is Scotty Scheffler, Robert McIntyre, or Rory McIlroy as the three that I am the biggest underweight stance on. And for some perspective there, I'm getting in my lineup pool, I'm getting about 17% Scotty compared to say 34. So I'm getting him about half as often as the field is, which is still getting him 17%. It's not saying I don't like Scotty. It's not saying I won't play him. It's not saying my best lineup won't have Scotty in it.
Right.
I will just have fewer of them than the field. McIntyre, I'm about 11% versus 22 to 25% on the field. Rory, I'm higher. I'm actually 21% relative to the 27 to 30%. After that, next guys that are like actually getting any meaningful ownership, I would say Jordan Smith, I'm a little lower on at 7,300. I think he could be a popular click. Jesper Svensson and Victor Perez, both of those guys I'm showing could be as high as 8 to 10% owned. And I'm going pretty meaningfully under on them.
Do you have a general rule of thumb? If you're underweight on a golfer, is that 50%, Scotty, because it's not you're playing zero of Scotty Scheffler. But if you think Scotty Scheffler is going to be 40% and you've decided, hey, I'm going to be underweight, are you trying to target a certain percentage, a different number? Obviously, it's different for each golfer because their projected ownerships are going to be different. But do you have a guideline that you roll with?
So the guideline would be I'm comfortable like on it's definitely specific to players, right? Because we all know that Scotty can certainly hurt me more than anyone, right? Like he's the guy that's most likely to win the golf tournament and by a meaningful margin. So in this case, when it comes to Scotty, if he's going to be 40% and the computer tells me to play 17, I'm probably going to play 17 and no less at that point. Now, if something like, I think Colin Morikawa is an interesting option here. He's going to come in maybe 15, 16% owned. If the computer tells me I would only need to play him at 8%, given the current form and the sentiment, I would be comfortable either fading him all the way or just down to a single percentage where I have a Colin Morikawa line.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I always like to pick the brain on that because it's a fade is not a full fade by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. Josh, keep them coming, buddy boy. Jarrett says, is the Thursday AM win significant enough to affect your build? So we did talk about this a little bit here, Mike. So we talked about that it could get better in the afternoon on Thursday, but is it enough that you have made changes to the way that you're building lineups?
So no, I don't think it's a huge deal. It's just one of those things where I would lean. If you are deciding between two players and all things in your opinion are really pretty equal, I would default to the afternoon, but I'm not intentionally avoiding Ludwig, who has an earlier morning tee time. I'm not intentionally avoiding Scotty Scheffler, who's got that, earlier morning tee time, right? So does it help me like Xander and Tommy Fleetwood a little bit better with the afternoon tee times? Yes, it does. I know I didn't say a lot. I use a lot of words to say not very anything super insightful there, other than to say it's worth noting you shouldn't be rebuilding everything you've worked on all week because of it.
Okay, fair enough. And Josh, let's keep them coming here. I think we've got a couple more. JK says, we haven't heard Daniel's name in a while. He's on a short list for DFS purposes for him. Your thoughts on how he grades out? It's true. We haven't talked about Daniel Berger, at least in this show, just yet.
Yeah, I haven't mentioned Berger here. I'm out. There's a lot of 7K range players. I think you can play him if you like him. I don't love the around the green play, the putting in general. Doesn't profile as like a super long hitter either. Obviously is good on approach, but I think I would be out on Berger in almost every instance here personally.
Yeah, he has really lost the putter as of late. So he's lost strokes putting in at least a stroke in 6 out of his last 7, which is something that when those strong results were coming in earlier this year, he was making everything and the stats were backing it up. I think he's probably like a 50th percentile guy in that range. I think he's fairly priced. I'm not sprinting out to get a lot of Daniel Berger, and I'm not avoiding him in any meaningful capacity. Are we prepared to do ISCO stuff, Mike?
I admittedly did not run anything for that. Yeah, I admit I did not.
Okay, then we will just skip that right there. How about this Eugenio Chacarra conversation? So Dan Casey is asking about Eugenio Chacarra. If that name sounds familiar, it should. He's top ranked amateur. He actually went and played on Live Golf, did not go back to Live, and has been working through the World Tour to get access to starts. And I actually think, don't quote me on this, Mike, but I actually think he is still suspended from the PGA Tour for another month or two.
Okay.
But this is a co-sanction event, and he is not suspended from the DP World Tour. So he is available here. And he's been playing pretty decent golf.
If you like it, sure. I'm never going to get mad at that. I think there's little doubt that he's talented enough to contend there. Would I like the price point to be like 6,300, 6,400, 6,500? Yeah. Not going to be for me, but I think it's a way to get different for sure.
He was a winner at the Indian Open at the end of March. He had a couple of very strong finishes immediately after that. He has cooled a little bit, but the talent is insane. All right, Josh, I think we've got at least one more coming. Jarrett says, you mentioned Connors on Monday's show as a zag opportunity, given the possible market uncertainty view of him. How are you feeling on Connors 2 days later? So for those who are just trying to figure out what's going on, he withdrew from what was last week? Detroit last week.
Yep.
And had a wrist injury, happened on the golf course. And as of Monday, when we looked at this, there was a report that he was not 100%, but he was going to tee it up this week. What are your now Wednesday thoughts on Corey Connors, and if anything has changed since Monday?
Yeah, great. I'm glad you mentioned it because I was relatively optimistic on it. I can tell you that I'm not going to play him at 89. Okay. When I run the lineups, I get let's see, 6%. My ownership number says 7. Good enough for me in the sense that like I don't think I'm going to gain a whole lot, and I don't think I'm going to lose a whole lot by avoiding the computer saying I should be playing him right at that number. It's a low enough number. It's less than 10% of my lineups. Like I'm going to sit it out. I was kind of optimistic, but I will take the wait and see approach. All things considered here.
Yeah, it looks like there has not been a tangible update since Monday. We're going to roll with the fact that he is healthy enough to try this, and we will see how it plays out. Jason's got a question around Tom Kim. So good history here indeed, but Tom Kim has been really struggling. Mike, is there anything that could leave you optimistic about Tom's chances this week?
I honestly don't think so. Let me see where I've even got him here. Tom Kim, almost identical setup there, 4% owned. So like, if you told me that you're going to play someone like that at 4%, I think it's fine. And this comes back to the question you had that I think is an interesting topic. If you're playing multiple lineups in DFS and we're talking about getting overweight on the field, this is where I think it gets really interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Because to get overweight on the field, you don't have to go jam them in half of your lineups when you're talking about a 4% player.
Right.
Now, if you like Tom Kim and you're playing multiple lineups and you wanted to take what I would consider to be a meaningful overweight stance and put him in 12% of your lineups where you're 3x the field, I think that's fine because you still have 88% of your lineups that don't include Tom Kim. And I think that is appropriate. So I don't like Tom Kim. I'm not going to do it. But when we're talking about a golfer like that, and it is truly sub 5%, I think that there's always a scenario where they can be played.
Yeah, it's all relative based on what the market is doing. Well, Mike, we're going to get this thing underway tonight. Like, don't mess around. Don't wait. We're going to get this thing underway tonight. Is there anything else that we missed that you want to make sure we discuss before this thing tees off in just a few hours?
Yeah. The thing I want to know, I know we don't like to disclose locations, but you are on the West Coast.
Indeed.
So how do you handle this? Do you go to bed and wake up early? Do you stay up late and catch a nap? How's this going to work?
Tonight's the hardest. So I will try to catch a nap and then wake up at probably like, I'll have to check the tee times, but like midnight or 1 o'clock for me. So it'll be like 2 hours into play. Stay up as long as I possibly can and then just try to get on. But then I'll basically be on like Scottish time for the next 2 weeks or like UK time. So I'll just be, running it that way. But tonight is very, very difficult. Yeah, it's going to beat me up tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody call me tomorrow. I'm going to be very grumpy and grouchy.
I love it.
All right, cool. Well, big thanks to everybody who hopped in the chat. Big thanks to producer Josh. Mike McClure always does great work as always. Plenty more early wedge coming and a lot of great golf coming as well. But for now, I'll say we'll catch you next time.